天早上都来这边喝咖啡。
咖啡对我来讲，就是说每天必须要喝的。
从小到现在已经60岁了，一定是喜欢南洋咖啡了，因为叫我喝卡布奇诺这些喝了不习惯。果啤要放糖，我们就叫果啤哦；果啤放牛奶，我们叫果啤。好像果啤 C 果啤 C 是用 evaporated milk， 我要少甜，果啤少甜就是果啤小奶。
Kopi all 小奶。In this kopi all 小奶 that includes kopi of course is Malay, all is Hokkien. 小奶 is some say is Hainanese. I tend to think of it more like Cantonese.
It's a vocabulary which is created by the people who are consuming the coffee and the kopitiam itself. Historically, Singapore has been a commodity trading center. Singapore was a huge coffee trading center in those days. With our colonial history, all our forefathers coming in from China, from India, and from the region, they created this local brew of ours, which has, been really a cultural linkage between all of us.
I grew up roasting coffee or trying to help to roast coffee. My father was a coffee roaster, so we would go to back alleys and roast coffee for coffee shop operators. That was in the 70s. I remember my first sip of coffee, I was probably about 3-4 years old, and that was the yuckiest drink I ever had. And the funny thing now is that I'm doing coffee and I'm drinking all my coffee kopi o kosong. 15 years ago when Toast Box first started. So the instruction back then was to produce a coffee that tastes like what my bosses tasted when he was younger. So coffee in the 60s, in the 70s.
I think for a certain age group, it is a drink which they must have every morning or sometime during the day. I think for the younger people, maybe it's a little bit of nostalgia, but at the same time, we have to look at people like Toastbox and Yakun who've upped their game. They've made their shops or their cafes very friendly, and the hygiene standards are much improved. The quality of their traditional coffee is also much, much better than what one can say, 15 years ago.
I was looking at local traditional coffee and seeing what can be done to elevate this whole experience. So if you look at Singapore coffee, when you come into like a grandeur, very much in the rhythm of Raffles. Like for example, like the Pangkuala fans that just breeze throughout the day. This is what I would feel is the Raffles experience. It's like the Grand Dame of Singapore. And so when people all over the world, they come to Singapore, it's an icon. It's a world icon. They say, yeah, come to the Raffles Hotel. This is actually traditional kopi, but it's a very high quality version of kopi. Blend number 1 is really my champion all-rounder. That's the blend that can be used in an espresso machine, pour over, siphon, cold brew. My signature over there is a kopi shake. I wanted to kind of just shake it up and create a kopi for the new Singapore.
What we do as Kopi House in the UK, we promote the kopitiam culture. We feel this is a very important thing that we must do, that we have to highlight that it is number 1, a different world of coffee, but number 2, a world of coffee that comes from Singapore. So these are 2 key things. The London Brunch Festival, we were invited to present in front of a live audience. There must have been maybe 100 people there approximately. In that period, we invited 20 different tasters to come up and try 4 different copies we had put together. So we had Kopi o Kosong, Kopi C, and Kopi Guyu. We had a staggering 20 out of 20 positive responses. But prior to that, we did explain what made coffee different from Western coffee. Once they accepted this and they tried our coffee, they loved it.
I remember when I was a young boy, living along Bukit Timah, there would be a kopitiam at the corner, and the old uncle would every week be in the back lane with a small drum roaster being fired by wood roasting his coffee.
以前是说咖啡是我们自己炒的，会比较好喝，比较香。
Nanyang coffee or traditional coffee tends to refer to the roasting process of adding caramel sugar to roasted coffee beans. The word for that is internationally is known as torrefaction or torrefacto coffee. We did not invent the method. The method was brought over by the Europeans. Basically what it entails is the coating of roasted coffee beans with caramel sugar. There are two reasons why people do that. The first is to coat the coffee to reduce the oxidation rate of coffee so that it can be stored for much longer. The second more possible reason, I believe, is that when you're adding sugar, it actually compensates for the weight loss with the roasting process, and that reduces the price further. In Singapore, the ratio, the torrefaction or the roasting of coffee is roughly about 30%. There's 18 kg of sugar to 60 kg of coffee beans. However, if you travel further up north, anywhere from Johor Bahru all the way up to Penang, there exists different ratio. So if you go to places like Batu Pahat, for example, they can go up to 200% of sugar. So it's a much stronger cup. It's like liquid charcoal, if I may put it that way. But if you put in some condensed milk and some evaporated milk, people do enjoy it.
我有喝过马来西亚，他们都是很甜的，在新加坡我们才能够喝到那个盐味，那个咖啡的盐味。
Over the last 100 odd years, despite being so geographically close, culturally close, we developed independently our own preference for this palate. And in Singapore, we are used to this 30% sugar for the last 40, 50 years at least.
It's something which you've grown up with and something which has been very close to your heart. You know, something which you feel when you go to a local coffee shop and you see, hey, you know, there's a Malay guy there, an Indian chap there, and a Chinese man. They're all drinking the same coffee and they're all having kaya toast and half-boiled egg, right? We're very harmonious in our racial relationships.
That's the primary reason that drives Singapore to become a coffee drinking nation. The figure we have from ICO, International Coffee Organization, Singapore consumes about 4.7 kg of coffee per capita. If you translate that to cups, that's about 280 cups per person per year. But of course for me, this is my 4th or 5th cup today, so I will drink a lot more than that.
这南洋咖啡是在新加坡已经历史了啦，说存在是一定会存在在那边的。他的老前辈还有在，还会带他这些小孩子去喝传统的咖啡啊，他不会说带他去喝那种Starbucks 啦这些的咖啡啊。
In terms of volume, the traditional coffee is still the biggest player in the market. I would say maybe 70% of the coffee consumed in Singapore is still very much locally based, Robusta-based coffee for traditional coffee, right?